Hey there, welcome to episode 86 of the FFS Talk audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at 6:06 a.m. on Thursday, July 17th, 2025. Why so early, you might ask? All shows should be recorded at this time or earlier, to be honest. Today there will be some fire alarm sounds that will preclude my recording of audio programming after 9 a.m. That is a story I will tell in the Coffee Solo audio program, so give that a listen sometime, probably tomorrow or the 18th, 17th or 18th. Look for that one. We'll talk about that in a moment. If you're not familiar with the FFS Talk audio program, it is an audio program that focuses on what works, what does not work, and what we might do about it. Ideally, it would be a conversational show, which would mean a guest or two. And I say this frequently. One of these days, I will endeavor to get some guests on here. I really need to get the show better found. So that's kind of what I've been working on that for all of my audio programming in general in the last couple of weeks. Anyway, title and topic for today's episode, knowing versus not knowing. I've kind of covered something similar to this. I know I've mentioned Dunning-Kruger before and a couple of other things. I have a link to that Wikipedia page in the links section today as well. So we'll see if any of this brings back any memories for those of you who have heard this program before. If you are not familiar, though, like I said, it is about what works, what doesn't, what we might do about it. So I prefer to think of these as planting of seeds for future discussions. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio Oh, by the way, if you don't know what FFS means, you need to meet more Irish people, especially if they're upset about something. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains show notes. Within the show notes, there is a summary that I will read to you and the links for today's episode, which I will also read to you. So let's get started so we can get finished before those fire alarms start going off. Summary: if someone is supposed to know something and others rely on them to know that something, but they do not know that something, what next? Oh no. The links for today's episode are as usual, but they will be changing slightly probably next week. buymeacoffee.com/danhugo is a profile page with links to all of my audio programs, some biographical information, some affiliate links for my favorite coffee beans. You're under no obligation to spend any money at this website, though you may if you like, and any proceeds through there will go towards the purchase of coffee, coffee beans, coffee accessories, etc. Coffee is what powers my various efforts. There's also some cash involved, but not from you if you don't want. The Buy Me an Update audio program has been published exclusively at buymeacoffee.com/danhugo/posts. However, this week's episode had to be delayed because of some technical support issues that took forever. I didn't really get an answer as to what was going on, but I was unable to publish the Monday episode until Tuesday. That was unacceptable. Not that the show is going to save any lives, but just the nature of the platform and the lack of technical support. So now you will find a link to the Buy Me an Update audio program also published on Spotify with the proper RSS feed, and we'll have more to say about Spotify in the near term. Ko-fi.com/danhugo, ko-fi.com. The hyphen is next to the 0 on most keyboards. Ko-fi.com/danhugo is a profile on that platform. Coffee Solo is an audio program also formerly published exclusively on ko-fi.com at ko-fi.com/danhugo/posts. So ko-fi.com/danhugo/posts for the Coffee Solo program. It too now has a Spotify audio feed. These are both linked on the buymeacoffee.com/danhugo profile page, and there will be more links to these things soon. I literally just did this Monday afternoon when I was dealing with the Buy Me an Update publication problem. Eventually I will have a primary publication point that is a website that I own. I have domains for all these, but that's a topic for another time. I know stuff, or maybe I don't. And finally, the Dunning-Kruger effect Wikipedia link. If you're not familiar with Dunning-Kruger effect, You probably know someone who does know what it is, even if they don't know it has that name. Trust me, people that exhibit the Dunning-Kruger effect but don't know what it is are the best people. I kid. So now on with the show. The sooner we start, the sooner we can end, so I can get some earplugs in and not have to hear fire alarm horns going off this morning. So who knows what anyway? Everybody is on their own path, so some learn more science, some learn more history, different languages, different levels of learning, different levels of practical application of knowledge, and so on, and so on, and so on. I know more about some things, and you know more about some other things, which can make for a good conversation, which is the point of this audio program, by the way, when we have guests in the future. Maybe you could be one of them. There are a variety of, variations on this theme, where perhaps one might want others to believe they know something, that they have some expertise for whatever reason, or they want others to believe they know something or have some expertise that they themselves know they do not possess. Maybe plain old ego, maybe there is a job role at stake, maybe authority is itself the job, like a TikTok expert, a YouTube expert. And there are certainly more scenarios you can think of. Sometimes this can escalate with false credentials, plagiarized papers, or other claims that back up the claims of expertise. This could be a real, serious problem, maybe even a crime. But this also seems like the easiest to spot if one is willing to do a little bit of checking. Unfortunately, we do so often take diplomas and certificates on a wall or descriptions of, claims of, without even actually seeing them. We accept these as truth. There's no harm in checking. So don't accept them as truth. So in other words, people don't always know what they say they know, and it can cause problems. There's the other side of the coin, though. I've painted a picture here of an authority figure, whether a content creator or a person in a management or leadership role or someone claiming to be the subject matter expert in general, where the one person is in a position to exert that false authority over others, someone at the head of the class or in the corner office. There are also those who, for whatever reason, might wish to give an impression that they are more knowledgeable, more expert than a manager or influencer or whomever. We can see this continuously now in the form of comments on content platforms. The YouTube comments, don't read the comments, they're insane. A subject matter expert with legitimate and provable knowledge, with credentials and a track record and everything, might receive comments from, anyone really, asserting some superior knowledge or experience to attempt to claim authority from the actual authority. So in other words, someone could swoop in and say, this person is wrong. Here's the truth. Come and see my channel. If they let you post links, which they usually don't, probably for that reason, among others. The reason for these sorts of things are also varied, of course. Maybe ego, maybe the desire to put someone else down. Just people are like that, especially someone who is actually smarter, someone who knows what they are talking about, so to speak. You might want to put those people down. Hey, you're smarter than me. I don't like that. Maybe there is a competition for a job role, a promotion, or some other recognition. Maybe it's all about hyping one's social media channel to draw consumers of the channel away from the competitors. Who knows? Well, maybe they know. I think debunking videos are kind of like this. Some of them can be sort of entertaining and interesting. Thunderfoot, or whatever name he uses now, very active debunking Tesla, SpaceX, a few other non-Elon Musk things. Kind of interesting. And then there's Professor Dave, who is irritating and likes to attack flat earthers and physicists and mathematics types. So sometimes the vitriol and the criticality are designed to just create content for one's own profit, perhaps. So there are lane changes and the halo effect and the opposite of the halo effect, whatever that is. There are yet other variations of these themes as well, but in one case, an actual recognized subject matter expert becomes well known for that expertise. We see this all the time, YouTube and TikTok and to a lesser extent, Instagram and Twitch and other platforms have enabled someone who does really have domain knowledge to make themselves something of a celebrity as an explainer, a science explainer, a science communicator is probably the more proper term. History communicator, Heather Cox Richardson, for example, really, really fascinating if you're into U.S. history. It gives license to that person to express authoritative opinions well outside of their areas of knowledge or expertise. This happens all the time too. If you're an expert in something, that must mean you know a lot about everything. I'm not going to say there are any astrophysicists out there with 3 names who have done that as an example, but there are. And sort of, not famously, but certainly noteworthy, Heather Cox Richardson, who I mentioned, was having a conversation on the Prof G show, Scott Galloway, and he asked her a question, and she said, "I'm really not familiar enough with that area to give a real answer. I focus on this part of U.S. history and not." I think the question had to do with Germany in the 30s, and so she said, "I could make some comparisons, but I don't have any actual expertise. My area of focus, my subject matter expertise, is in U.S. government, U.S. history, etc." And Galloway, Prof G, expressed gratitude and sort of astonishment that she would actually admit up front that that is not her area, and she's not going to comment on things she's not knowledgeable in. And he pointed out, probably correctly, that more people should do that, stay in their own lane, so to speak. But they do not stay in their lane, so to speak, and there is a possibility that the expertise in their particular field will be conferred to some other areas by their audience, and they don't help it by actually delving into areas they are merely pedestrian, and so maybe they themselves are sort of fomenting that. This is a form of the halo effect, where an audience of one or more, assigns credibility to someone based on celebrity or some particular accomplishment or just plain old popularity. It turns into confidence in some expertise that may not exist. Surely if that person who we all know says something, they must be right. Because we all know that they're very popular. They must be right because they have a lot of likes, a lot of views on their content, whatever it is. We can see this with the JRE, the Joe Rogan Experience, for example. There are so many others, but everybody knows Joe Rogan, so we'll just pick on him just that one time. We see this in that lane change scenario, which makes it easier to believe someone expert in one field when they opine convincingly on another. The halo effect may be assigned for any reason, though, elevating credibility based on some external factors, not on actual innate knowledge and expertise. And by the way, people that actually have expertise, have actual practical knowledge usually. They are a clinical researcher. They are an engineer that has actually, been a part of a design process for something. They're a virologist. They're an immunologist. They are an astronaut. They actually do the things that they're expert in. If they've only read the same stuff on the internet that other people have, no matter how expert they are in their chosen field or their domain of expertise, it doesn't automatically make everything that they've read on the internet more educational for them. So not to take away from some individual's subject matter expertise, but I have expressed this before. If you know how to read a scientific paper, then you are able to extract or maybe even understand some of the numerical analysis, the error bars or confidence intervals, the scientific method, what the charts are saying, this plot with the error bars. So you're familiar enough with that stuff. It doesn't make me or anyone who knows how to read a paper any more expert in the subject of the paper. But we may be able to extract sort of where the limits of what we are understanding are and so on. But it is so easy to say, oh, I get it. I have done my own research. And that's when we run into problems. Now, this might work in the other direction as well. Expertise, real and provable, might be discounted based on some popular opinion. The wisdom of crowds, perhaps. This is becoming alarmingly common in this era, especially where the halo may be removed from an actual expert and assigned to like a comedian. Except this isn't actually funny. These things do happen. They have happened. They continue to happen. And it's ludicrous. And now we can add AI to the mix. As we know, or maybe we don't, AI models, the ones sometimes branded with person names like Claude or Devin, or Cursor or Copilot, these are aimed at software developers, or just the classic ChatGPT. And by the way, the GPT part stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It's describing how this chat client works. So what's going on behind the scenes when you give it a prompt, which I think now is being called a context. These tend to be trained on, so far, on the stuff we find on the internet, except that they take it literally and they use it literally. They make inferences, but they're using it as is. You may have read something somewhere and you're sort of apply it during some pub argument. Like, the other day I read an article. But these tools remember that thing word for word and apply it directly, whether it is appropriate or not, though it tends to seem appropriate, especially for your homework. So when you turn it in, it sure sounds like you know what you're talking about, but you don't know what you're talking about because you had ChatGPT or some other similar generative AI model spit out your term paper. And somewhere in there, it made some weird assertions and quoted something that doesn't exist because someone on Twitter mentioned something, etc. As AI becomes more and more convincing, the humans among us will be less and less likely to seek out subject matter expertise, falling back to simply asking our favorite chat tools their question, well-formed or not, and accepting the response as truth. We already saw this, 2 decades ago. I read it on the internet, so it must be true. Now it won't even be that nuanced. There are some very smart people, including the aforementioned Scott Galloway, who will say out loud, I typed it into ChatGPT and it told me fill in the blank. This is very bizarre to me, but it is becoming the norm. We are already seeing this take place by content creators in videos and in writing, though not so much in audio programs like this one, where they are literally quoting, making use of, or even having AI generate some video or other content that they will insert into their own. Or one might have sought out some sort of supporting evidence a long time ago. Like, let me look that up. I used to say, there's no reason to have arguments along the lines of recall, right? Hey, what was the score of the game yesterday? It was 3-2. No, it wasn't. It was 4-5. You don't have to have that argument anymore. You don't even have to ask what the score is. You can just look it up in your phone. Well, now you can just ask, hey, ChatGPT, what's the score of the game yesterday? And it will go into great lengths describing, well, they're probably not trained on data from yesterday, but maybe with MCP and all that, the model context protocol, you'll have a tool that will go out and search the appropriate website for sports scores and other game details and whatnot, and it will summarize it for you. Why have people in the mix at all? If your model of choice is picking up data from the masses, like popular opinion, popular discussion, the trending stuff, suddenly trending notions could outweigh reality. Literally, it's sort of the ultimate Dunning-Kruger potential. If your favorite digital expert is claiming false credibility and won't accept an argument against, that is, if your favorite digital expert is some AI, hey, I read it on the internet and now I'm spitting it back at you. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to log into your bank account and steal all your money. No, ChatGPT, don't do that. So what do we do about this? And again, I'll remind you, I'm going to keep this episode brief so that I can avoid fire alarms. I'm going to have some stuff to do this morning. So, but in all honesty, not because of that, but here's the deal. This pretty much lays out the parts that work and that do not work. I've described, what we basically have here is a descent into, should I call it laziness? I don't want to look up facts. I'll just ask some software that I know nothing about. I have used this example. Suppose you walk into a doctor's office and a surgeon's office, and this person suggests to you that the problem you're having requires surgery. And you say, I'd like to get a second opinion. And most doctors, most surgeons will, of course, say that's the way things work. So yes, of course. So you can go get a second opinion, a third opinion. As you seek out these opinions, you can probably see diplomas or you can see credentials. You can see that they went to a particular educational institution. They've been practicing medicine for so long. You can look up reviews. You can see how the surgical procedures turned out. And there's also all manner of background checking you can do for yourself to make sure that they're legitimate, that they're talented, that they're successful. Well, when you ask ChatGPT or Claude or Devin or DeepSeek or any other model or use any of these tools, and you try, and this is the same is true of Google and Bing and Google mostly. You have to trust that you're getting a well-rounded collection of responses in the search engine, the SERP, search engine result page. So the first 10 or 15 or whatever it is, you are trusting that those are actually relevant. That was the game changer of PageRank and MapReduce and all the other technologies that Google has developed since over its lifetime. Now we're trusting AI to tell us things. And there are people asking for medical advice or for life advice, financial advice. They're asking for advice from this thing that will speak back to them as though they're speaking to a person. Unfortunately, there is no wall of diplomas. We don't even know, often we don't know where it's getting this information. Sometimes you'll get a reasoning model will explain how it's coming to some conclusion. You might be able to figure out what the sources are. End of the day, though, are you going to do that? You're going to accept the answer you receive and maybe act on it. So there's no tendency, and I could be wrong, and I hope I am, but there's really no tendency. I haven't seen anyone say, this is what ChatGPT told me. Let me check the sources. Let me see how it arrived at that conclusion. I'm not seeing that happen. Access to information has been expanding almost continuously for decades, but so has access to misinformation and even disinformation and all manner of perverse incentives to drive those negatives. And you've already had to be proactively seeking out, sort of doing your own fact checking, credible information, trying to reject the stuff that is not credible and so on. And to be honest, I think humans are doing a horrible job of that. They were already. The rapid rise of AI, and that is an understatement to be sure, rapid, is only accelerating the negatives for the casual user and most people in general. In the hands of those using these tools for, say, research with a sense of how they work and what they are providing as responses, as answers, maybe as output, uses beyond text and media generation are interesting, even exciting. I just read an article the other day that there are people, the mysterious they, are experimenting with using AI, artificial intelligence tools, to create circuit boards, which means routing signals on circuit boards. When you route signals, you have to be aware of Lenz's law, of trace lengths, matching trace lengths. What else? Vias, multiple layers, keep out zones, analog and digital motes, and so on. So there's a lot of physics involved in properly routing a high performance circuit board in the modern era with CPUs running at 5 gigahertz, memory clocks running outrageously fast. You got to have all the traces the same length. You have to have termination so that you don't get reflections on the lines, induction between layers, all kinds of stuff. Actually, I guess capacitance between layers. But there's a ton of consideration that goes into laying out a circuit board, especially higher performing circuits. So AI tools used for that, they are not coming up with bad medical or financial advice. They're showing you their work. Like, here is a routed circuit board, and an experienced circuit board designer. I've worked with some of these people. They're amazing. They can look at it and say, that's not going to work. Or they'll look at it and say, that is not how I would have done that, but that looks good, or etc. Right? So if you're using these tools to perform specialized work, and the models in use and the tools are able to apply classification rules and can generate new, and it's sort of like the deep was it called? Deep Alpha, Deep Go Alpha, the system that won at Go by actually it was the Deep Mind that won the chess game by doing something that a human player wouldn't do. So being creative, synthesizing new options to develop strategy. These are interesting applications of these tools to come up with scientific outcomes, mathematical outcomes, and so on. These are interesting. They're exciting. These are the sorts of things that I would be interested in pursuing. Unfortunately, headlines are lousy with hallucination and worse. And that is while humans might still be authoring those headlines. If you are a fan of Grok, and who is really, you may have heard that Grok 4, when it launched, was being particularly spicy with, well, it trains on Twitter, apparently. So you're going to get what you're going to get. I don't know what we might do about this, though. Individuals will need to take responsibility for doing their own research, perhaps. And people already do that, right? I did my own research, and I know the Earth is flat and the moon landing is a hoax. And there are microchips in those vaccines. Whatever doing your own research will mean anymore. A rare state of affairs at the end of an episode of the FFS Talk audio program. The what we might do about it portion of the episode, which is usually here, is left hanging, as are we. To be continued in conversations with those who have ideas, ideally human. I honestly don't know exactly what's going to happen and what we might do about it. So that's where it is. Looks like today's episode will be just under 30 minutes. Not too bad. This is it's really interesting, but I do know that people who are supposed to know things and who don't, it's becoming more and more difficult to differentiate those people, unless you yourself are also a subject matter expert. But boy, howdy, is it becoming interesting. Maybe I was going to tell this goofy story, but it's not. When you ask somebody for their opinion, hey, does this look right? And they say, yeah. Do you ever ask them, do you know what it's supposed to look right? How it's supposed to look to make it look right? Sometimes we just want a reassuring response, some confirmation bias. And I've been in that situation where I then go look up whatever I was asking about, and that other person was just wrong. But they don't know that they're wrong, or they don't want to seem wrong. They feel better for giving an answer that they think is right. Some of those reasons I already said. So the ability for us as casual people in the world to be able to verify anything, and that is production by a street. I'll leave it there. I think there's a lot to discuss, including mufflers and sound suppression. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you again. Thank you so much for listening. Again, I say that every week, I think. Take care, and don't trust what anybody tells you.